Chapter 11, The Tree of Curated. You saw the Tree of Curated, Rory says, a hopeful smile on his face. Freya gives him a look to remind him that she doesn't know what that is. Merlin answers for him. The tree used to be the link between this realm and the human one, keeping the balance. Think of it like a life source between the two. By the way you described it, that's what it looked like before it was destroyed. And that's when I disappeared, Freya says, almost a question. The puzzle pieces finally start to fit together. A crease forms between her brows as she asks, did I have something to do with the link breaking? None of them answer her. Did I? Freya asks again. That's why she was cursed, maybe she deserved it. The thought scares her, hoping it's not true. But their looks say otherwise. Rory rubs the back of his neck as he answers, we don't know exactly. The coincidence is too strong for them not to be connected. We just don't know what part you had to play in it. Was I the kind of person that would do something like that? Lily answers quickly, no Freya. You were kind. We know you didn't cause it. She looks between her and the two males. But the rest of the court wasn't so easily convinced, Rory adds, slightly awkward. Freya is surprised he's capable of it. That's why no one can find out her identity, why Aaron was so angry at her return. The reason she needed the disguise of allure. The fairies she's surrounded by have already made up their mind about her. She can't blame them, not really. A part of their world was destroyed. Freya would want someone to blame too. If the life source was destroyed, why weren't the realms destroyed with it? Freya asks. We're not sure, but we think it was broken into two pieces, Merlin answers, his voice cool and logical. One half in the human realm and the other half here. We don't know what they are, but we think you might know. Why me? Merlin cocks his head. Think about it. The same day the Tree of Curated is destroyed, you vanish to the human realm. How else would the other half get there? He has a point. Freya leaves his question hanging in the air, unanswered. Even if what he says is true, she doesn't know where or even what the split piece would be. By the way he talked about it, Merlin doesn't know either. She realizes this answers her question from last night. What is the point of all of this is? They want to connect the realms. And they think she has the answer to it. Lily pipes up. We better go to dinner soon, we don't want the court to suspect anything. She turns to Freya. Do you feel okay enough to go? Freya nods, steps out of bed to prove her point. This time she lands firm on her feet. The dizziness went away in the wake of the intense conversation. Freya and Lily get ready together in Freya's room. Lily helps her choose a rosy pink skirt paired with a fitted matching corset. Her white linen blouse loosely hangs off her shoulders. Lily fixes her hair, pinning her soft curls behind her head. Her eyes catch Freya's in the reflection of the mirror. So, Lily asks, her voice light. Is that really all you remember? Freya stops putting her blush lipstick on. What do you mean? Her ears are hot. Her bargain with Rory of not lying flashes through her head. She'll have to be strategic about this. Well, you might have talked in your sleep, Lily says with her lips pursed and eyebrows arched. Freya sticks to questions as a response. What did I say? She tries to sound casual, as if the thought doesn't worry her at all, even though it definitely does. You did remember something else. Lily points at her. Tell me. I don't want to talk about it. Freya tries to go back to getting ready, hoping Lily drops it. She doesn't. Is it about Merlin? Lily asks, examining her face. She doesn't miss the brief flash of guilt on Freya's face. It is, isn't it? That would make sense, considering you said his name in your sleep. Freya slowly turns in her seat to face Lily, the color draining from her face in embarrassment. Through gritted teeth she gravely asks, I what? Hey, don't shoot the messenger. Lily says defensively at Freya's misdirected rage. You're the one that did it. You're lucky you were asleep, it was very awkward. Freya tries to imagine Rory's reaction as she says Merlin's name. A small smile tugs at her lips at the thought of him being jealous. But the thought of the oath, and how he didn't mention a way to break it, makes her stop. Lily continues. Of course, Merlin avoided eye contact and remained his usual self. Rory, though, he tried to hold his composure. Tried? Freya asks. He always has to be dramatic. He was upset but quickly got over it, until you said Merlin's name again. Why did her unconscious self have to be so talkative? Lily, sounding proud of Freya, says, I think you made him jealous. Especially when Merlin carried you back. Freya practically snaps her neck to look at Lily. He what? Lily laughs, she's definitely having fun with this. Well, you were out for so long, we thought you should at least sleep in a bed. And that was around the time you started saying his name, so we let him be the one to carry you back. She explains it like it was the most obvious choice. A light knock at the door saves Freya from more humiliation. Lily calls out for them to come in like it's her room. Merlin walks in, dressed in a matching black tunic and slacks. His eyes on Freya, biding his time until they can have a moment alone. She now understands his questioning earlier. Freya made it quite obvious one of her memories included him, and they all watched her lie about it. Lily breezes past them, through the open bedroom door, leaving Merlin and Freya alone. She braces herself for him to bring up the memory, to have to explain why she said she called out his name during it. Instead, he nods in the direction Lily went. Shall we go? They walk to the dining hall in silence. Freya is surprised at his calmness, the ease in which acts like nothing has changed between them. Not just from the offer to break the oath, but also in the way he infiltrated her mind earlier. And now they have to act like a couple in front of the entire court, including Rory. Freya's heart rate speeds as she accepts Merlin's extended arm. The dining hall is once again teeming with life. Less eyes on them as they promenade to the head table. Lily is already seated, but Rory's spot lies vacant. Certainly, he wouldn't miss dinner over what happened earlier, not with Aaron's eyes watching their every move. They take their seats, Lily already having a sip of wine as she gives numerous side glances to Freya and Merlin. Freya gives her a warning look. Lily just smiles at her, going back to her glass. Rory staggers in a few minutes later, leisurely walking to his place at the table. Seems his good mood is back. Or it could simply be a mask of nonchalance. Good evening, Freya, he says as passes her, brushing his hand along her shoulder. Definitely not a mask. Aaron carries on with his greeting to the court, and Freya is grateful for the lack of relevant announcements regarding her. After the toast, Freya makes a point to choose her own food, lest Rory tries to help her. He catches it and smirks. Lily offers her wine and she declines. Freya needs a clear head tonight, especially if she and Merlin are going to have their conversation tonight. She'll need to be strategic about the truth and how to explain what she wants. The night continues, leading into the dancing without so much of a whisper from Merlin. Lily and Rory were enjoying themselves drinking and dancing. Lily begged Freya to dance, but it seems like she found herself a better partner with Daniel. Freya watches them from her spot against the wall, genuinely happy for them. Part of her wants to join them and indulge in carefreeness. But the events of the day prevent her. Merlin disappeared right after dinner. The notion of their conversation apparently slipped his mind. She ventures along the wall, heading to the private balcony Rory showed her the night before. She welcomes the cool air that whips around her, hoping it will clear her head. The waning moon casts only a glimmer of light on the garden. She studies the lilac bell flowers, a few buds still closed. Freya extends a hand to touch the petals, feeling the velvety texture between her fingers. A jolt of energy rushes through her, like she's seeping in an unknown power from inside her as it travels through her chest and pools in her fingers. The intensity of the feeling makes them shake. The sensation evaporates as she watches the closed buds bloom in seconds. A dim green haze lingers around the open petals. She abruptly retracts her hand from the flowers, her eyes wide. Magic. She just did magic. Freya wonders how it's even possible with her humanity still intact. Freya jumps when the door opens, streaming light onto her. The silhouette of Merlin stands there. He runs a hand through his tousled black hair. He strides to her after shutting the door behind him. He cocks an eyebrow, assessing Freya. He glances between her and the bloomed flower, as if he knows exactly what just happened. His next words confirm Freya's suspicion. Having some fun out here? Chapter 12. Violet Temptation. Merlin faces Freya, 2 glasses with bubbling liquid in his hands. It took you long enough to find me, Freya says sarcastically. Despite her edged tone, nerves simmer inside her. Freya walks to the small opening in the terrace that overlooks the village, distancing herself from the bloomed flower. He raises an eyebrow at her and casually trails behind her to the ledge. And it took you long enough to realize your powers have been returning, he says with a slight smile on his lips. Freya ponders this, her eyes staring out into the dark night. The mismatched cottages of the village below weave together until they reach the edge of the forest. Only the trees' silhouettes are visible in the ebbing moonlight. She thinks of the growing fissure inside of her, the energy leaking out of it, like a small stream trickling between 2 stones. She quietly asks, "My powers are coming back?" Out of the corner of her eye, she sees his eyes graze over her, assessing her. He shrugs ever so slightly, his voice cool as the night's breeze. "I think at least part of your magic is locked inside of you, and that ever since stepping foot in the realm, it's been drawing them out." He turns from the view as he says this, and this time she meets his eyes. What I'd like to know is if your full capabilities are locked inside as well. He's right. There is something buried inside her, trying to force its way out. But she doesn't know how to access it to answer its plea to be free. She wonders if he's been studying her this whole time, seeing the change in her from since their first encounter. She winces at the memory. What are my full capabilities? From Rory's previous explanation, her green eyes mean that she's an elemental fae, and that her powers are linked to the nature around her. But no one has told her the extent of her powers, or what her role was before she vanished. And it's time that she knows. Merlin grins, a rare sight for him. Even I don't know that. He hands her the second glass in his hand, the bubbles now deflated. She accepts it but looks warily at the liquid. Merlin quickly picks up on her worry and adds, "There's no wine in it." She takes a small sip at the same time he does, and she relishes in the light, floral flavor of the beverage. Merlin swallows and then says, "There is something else we need to talk about." Freya drinks the rest of the glass, buying time before she has to answer. She's planned what she's going to say, how she'll delicately dance around the truth to find the answers she's desperately searching for. How to break the oath. Merlin sets the glass on the edge, one elbow also on it. He looks at her quizzically. "Why did you say my name while you were asleep?" Freya has her vague answer ready, but instead she confesses, "I was having a memory of you about a conversation we had." Her eyes widen at her blunt honesty. Merlin raises his eyebrows at her, setting his glass on the ledge. She looks at her own. "How why did I?" Freya asks almost to herself. "You really should be more wary of those around you, Freya," Merlin says, his eyes steady on her. Freya looks between the empty glass and him. She thinks back to his potion, the bitter one that slid down like oil. This one. It was enticing. Tempting. She chucks the glass over the edge, like the damage hasn't already been done. Like if whatever he gave her could be released by breaking the glass. They're so high up, elevated over the village that she can't even hear it shatter. "You're a prick," Freya spits. She rushes to the door to get away from him, from whatever potion he slipped in her drink. The handle doesn't budge. She tries again. Even with all of her body weight pulling at the door, it remains still, unmoving. "There's no use, I charmed the door," Merlin calls from his spot across the terrace. Freya freezes. She searches for a way out. A way out from telling the truth to Merlin, from blurting out the thoughts and feelings hidden inside her. Anger courses through her as she realizes there's no escape. She's trapped, no better than a defenseless animal. Her honesty comes unprovoked. "I would expect this from Rory, but not you. What did you do to me?" She keeps her distance, standing firm near the door as if by some miracle it could still open. He muses. "Interesting you say that." He doesn't offer a further explanation. So he doesn't have the potion inside him. He can still lie, Freya realizes. The bargain about tricks, lies, secrets. That was made with Rory. Not him. She walks toward him, prepared to slap him. Hard. Before she can, he asks, "What was the memory?" Freya bites down on her tongue, fighting against the truth, screaming to be let out. "The potion wins. We were fighting. I was angry with you, and now I can see why." She hopes her words sting. "You can do better than that." He takes a few steps toward her, closing the gap between them. "What were we fighting about, Freya? You offered a way out of the oath, a way to break it. I didn't want it broken, and you?" She shuts her mouth. She can't say it. Her lips betray her. "You said I've known for a while. How you felt." He nods slowly, his amethyst eyes unreadable. Freya hates this. She hates knowing she'll be the vulnerable one. "How did you feel?" Freya recoils from his unexpected response. How did she feel? Angry, confused, unsure. And another part of her felt hopeful. "I feel," Freya starts. Even with the truth serum coursing through her, she doesn't have a specific answer. "I feel angry that Rory didn't tell me there's a way out. I feel confused that you felt that way about me but haven't shown any signs of it. I feel like I'm here to serve a selfish purpose of yours and Rory's. I feel like whatever it is you want, I won't be able to give to you. To any of you." She hopes Merlin doesn't notice her glassy eyes. The emotion she's kept bottled up now swirling inside her, rising to the surface. These are words she wishes she had the courage to say to Rory when he pesters her. When Lily looks at her, expecting a response from the old Freya she used to know. Instead, she's saying them to Merlin. The one person who doesn't hang their emotions or desires on their sleeve. The one person she can't read. He's silent, letting Freya's confession float in the air between them. He's so close to her she wants to get away, to hide her face, her feelings from him. She steps back, despite knowing there's nowhere to go. Merlin catches her arm and pulls her closer to him. They stand a fraction away from each other, his strong hand still on her arm. His breath is slow and cool. You don't have to give me anything you don't want to. I don't know what I want, Freya whispers. With that, he pulls her in, wrapping his arms around her. Her head falls into his solid chest, and she's thankful for the privacy it gives her. To feel what she's feeling without having to show him. In her ear, he murmurs, "What do you think of the offer now?" She keeps her face hidden from him, buried in his chest. The only concealment of her truth she's forced to tell. I want to break it. As Freya says the words out loud, she feels a weight lift. Living up to everyone's expectations of her. Having them see her as she once was instead of who she is now. She hadn't realized how exhausting it is. She pulls away slightly to look him in the eye, waiting for his response. His eyes betray his stoic face, the light gleaming in them. One of Merlin's hands releases from her shoulder and travels to her face, sliding his thumb over her cheek as he moves strands of hair behind her ear. Freya's heart rate increases, but she stays still, as if any movement would rupture the understanding between them. I want you to be happy, Freya. Even without the potion in him, she can tell he's telling the truth. And I want to be able to trust you, Freya responds. How can I make you do that? Merlin asks. A smile rests on his lips, his eyes challenging her. For starters, no more unexpected potions, she demands, staring into his eyes. And no more getting in my head. He cocks an eyebrow. Only 2 things and you'll trust me? No, she quickly says. There's more. He looks amused, waiting for her list of demands. If we're going to break the oath, I need to be the one to tell Rory. Merlin looks equally surprised as Freya at her words. She's not sure why she wants to be the one to tell him. He kidnapped her. Brought her to an unfamiliar world with no way to return to the one she once knew. But still, a tiny part of her feels guilt for going behind his back. For using his best friend to break his heart. Interesting, Merlin says as he contemplates her requests. No more potions and you can tell Rory when the time is right. But getting in your head? I don't know if I can promise that. His eyes flicker to her lips, and she knows he's not talking about his mind tricks. You know what I mean, Freya sternly says. His hand still rests on her cheek, the other laced around her shoulder. She realizes her hands are on him as well, grasping his outstretched arm and the other on his chest. She pulls away and he lets her. She hears a click from the door, signaling it unlocking. He let go of her, his eyes pointing to the door. Shall we get back to the party? He waits for her to move. A part of her wants to say no, to stay in the quiet. But her feet lead her to the door, opening it to reveal the ongoing dance of tipsy fairies enjoying their night. Chapter 13 Bedside Memories. Freya stares at the billowing top of her canopy bed, unable to sleep after her conversation with Merlin. Luckily, the potion he gave her wore off before Rory or Lily could ask her something she didn't want to answer in the dining hall. She was thankful the rest of the night went by quickly. Lily was dancing and laughing with Daniel, and Rory was nowhere to be seen. Freya felt a prick of nervousness that Rory overheard them, but Merlin told her he was with Aaron. A conversation she's more than happy to have missed. Flora sleeps comfortably next to her, almost mocking Freya of her restlessness. At least someone's getting a good night's sleep. Eventually, in the early hours of the morning, Freya finally dozes off. Her sleep is anything but peaceful as memories return. Lesser in comparison than the visions she waded through earlier, but the fractured fragments of her life still careened her into an unsettling uneasiness. She watches as her face elf passively strokes Flora by a sparkling lagoon, followed by Freya and Lily strolling through the familiar walls of the castle. There was another woman that popped up now and then, always in the background, but catching Freya's attention each time. Her face is always hidden by a shadow or her raven hair. Then the flashing visions distort and she's in the same room she woke up in earlier that day. Rory's bedroom. Freya sees herself, her face elf, in the corner of the room, a seductive smile on her face. Rory, standing on the other side of the massive bed, matches Freya's eager smile. He unties his green linen shirt, pulling it over his head, his muscled chest and stomach magnified by the fey glow around him. Both Freya and dreaming Freya watch as his hands move to his slacks, unclasping. Freya's eyes snap open. Cold sweat pools at the back of her neck. The morning light streams through her window, illuminating the image of Rory shirtless lingering in her mind. She gets out of bed, shaking the memory out. Why did it have to be that? Looking out the window, Freya watches as the morning sunlight cusps over the distant mountains. Fairies roam the widespread gardens surrounding the castle, more out than usual. Her eyes are still heavy with sleep, but after the memory she just saw, she's not sure when sleep will ever come easy again. Freya takes her time getting ready for the day, soaking in the bath and only getting out when her fingers start to prune. She chooses flowy olive green pants and a short sleeve white top. Her dark curls spill over her shoulders. Finally, she opens her bedroom door, and Flora hops out, onto her adventure of the day. Freya swears to herself she'll follow her one day, just to see what her familiar is up to. Freya meanders down the hallway, in search of breakfast, hoping she doesn't run into Rory, or Merlin. At the thought of Merlin, their tense conversation runs through her mind. She's still debating if she can trust him. He agreed to her conditions, or at least 2 of them. After he'd left, she realized he never agreed to stay out of her head. Now he's in it in more ways than one. She hasn't allowed herself to think of what else happened in the garden. The flower blooming just by her touch. The jolt of magic that soured through her. That energized her. No, she needs more answers. She wants to understand her powers, what they do and how to use them. If she wants to know, maybe she'll have to use the truth potion on Merlin. Freya catches herself smiling at the thought. Continuing down the ivy-lined hallway, Freya makes more wrong turns on the way to the dining hall than she would like to admit. She's surprised to find the usually jam-packed room empty, no breakfast in sight. She debates between returning to her room or roaming the gardens, joining the bustling fairy she saw from her window. A flash of Rory undressing runs through her head. Garden it is. The bright morning sun greets her, kissing her cheeks. She sticks to the trees for shade, and for anonymity. She watches the fairies use magic, green and blue flickers of light leaking out of their fingers as they set up massive tents. She'd been to holidays and festivals at home before, but they were never this extravagant. The jewel-toned oversized canopies are filled with elegantly carved tables, and an array of flowers. The largest one hosts an ornate painting of a midnight sun. Freya spots Rory roaming about with a lazy smile, talking to fairies as he travels up and down the rows of tents. Some of them are already filled with wine and food. Despite her growling stomach, Freya ducks behind a tree to remain unnoticed by him. A familiar scene to the night she was kidnapped. She continues to watch him, pushing the memory of him shirtless further and further down. She shuts it out, physically closing her eyes to imagine anything else. When they open, her eyes go back to where Rory was just standing. But it's as if he was never there, her eyes scanning the crowds to no avail. As she's about to turn back to the castle, she feels a light tap on her right shoulder. His signature move. Freya glares at him over her shoulder, his lazy smile now mischievous as he takes her in. "Freya, are you avoiding me?" he asks, his hand sliding by her and landing on the tree. She ducks under it and attempts to walk away. Quick as a flash, he stands in front of her. "Oh, so you are avoiding me," he taunts. "Maybe I am," Freya says as aloof as possible. "Does that bother you?" His eyes narrow, but his grin remains. "I think we both know the answer to that." Freya rolls her eyes at the audacity of this man. If only he knew what she's planning, what she and Merlin agreed upon. A twinge of guilt stirs in her. She tries to walk past him and he follows her. "Don't you want to know what they're setting up for?" Rory asks, trying to raise her intrigue. She's not going to let it work. But still, she asks, "Isn't it the midsummer celebration you mentioned? 2 days. Only 2 days to break the oath before having to decide." He smiles, his eyes roaming over the extravagant tents and decorations. "Ah, so you do listen to me. And you enjoy talking," Freya bites back. And then adds, "I listen when it's something important." "Everything I say is important," he responds smugly. Freya snorts at this, and his face relaxes in a genuine smile. "I thought there was still 2 days until midsummer?" Freya asks, the question weighted. "You may not have noticed, but us fairies enjoy dragging out a party as long as possible," he says as he runs a hand through his ruby hair. "The midsummer ball is in 2 days. Tonight is the summer solstice celebration. And tomorrow is the tournament." Freya raises her eyebrows at this. "A tournament? For someone avoiding me, you're asking a lot of questions." Seeing her annoyed reaction, he follows up. "Over the next 2 days, most of the fairies in the realm will be here. The tournament always draws in a big crowd." Still didn't fully answer her question, but she's done asking questions after his initial comment. A new thought hits her. A full castle could make it more difficult to hide her identity. If just one person asks her a question she can't answer or answers wrong. She doesn't let herself finish that thought. He waits for a response, but Freya looks at the castle. "Well, this has been..." Freya trails off, unsure of the word that would encapsulate how she's feeling. "Interesting." But I think Lily's looking for me. An excuse to leave may be a bad one, but she starts to walk to the castle. His voice behind her makes her stop cold. I thought we agreed no lies. A hot flash of heat rushes through her. Her entire being wants to call him out for his lies about another way out from the oath. Not yet, she reminds herself. Fine, I want to leave this conversation and go to my room. Is that honest enough for you? That's a start, he says. She turns to walk from him again. But this time he grabs her wrist before she can walk away. Soft enough that if she wanted she could work her arm out of it. Whatever it is with Merlin, what you saw or felt. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. I don't, Freya says. For a moment his playful smile falters. Her answer confirms that something did happen to make her say Merlin's name in her sleep. She couldn't tell him about it, not now at least. Fair enough. His sly smile returns as he says, but please Freya, if you have any more memories of me, let me know. His chuckle lingers in the air even as he vanishes. Freya stays in her room most of the day, dozing off with no forgotten memories plaguing her. She's pulled out of her dreamless sleep from a knock at the door. Lily walks in, and Freya instantly notices how stunning she looks. Her strawberry curls are half pulled back with two intricate braids weaving into each other. The bright sapphire dress fitted perfectly, more formal than the previous nights. Which leads Freya to look at the other dress hanging in her hands. Most likely meant for her. The blush pink dress is lined with detailed flowers. A hairpin with matching flowers sits on top. Freya raises an eyebrow, asking everything she needs in the one look. It's the summer solstice tonight, we have to look good. Lily smiles. Freya can tell she's excited, and she hates to admit that a small part of her is too, even if it's solely for the distraction from the decisions building around her. Chapter 14, The Summer Solstice. Freya and Lily stand in front of her extravagant mirror, both of them ready for what's waiting downstairs. Freya's still not entirely sure what the summer solstice traditions will entail. Apparently it's something worth spending hours getting ready for, and Freya hasn't felt this beautiful in a long time. She hasn't seen herself like this before. With the full dress and flowers in her hair, she almost resembles a true fae. She wonders what she looks like with the allure, only visible by the other fairies, Merlin cast on her when they entered the realm. We look pretty good, don't we? Lily says into the mirror, laughing light-heartedly. To Freya's surprise, she joins her. The weight of her circumstances is still heavy, but Freya relishes in these moments. Lily has a knack for relieving Freya's stress. Lily jumps when she notices the setting sun. Gathering her skirt, she skips to the door. I have to meet Daniel, but Merlin should be here soon. She runs out the door, leaving Freya in her room waiting for the looming tension between her and Merlin. At least she knows not to accept a drink from him tonight. Minutes pass and Freya can't wait idly anymore. The thought that he might not show up, that their conversation last night was too much, makes her hands clammy and she paces around the room. Before she can get in her head too much, a slight rap at the door signals his arrival. Freya quickly composes herself, giving Flora one last scratch, and opens the door. Merlin stands there in a slick black tunic and pants, the top of his chest visible in the loose shirt. He extends an arm to her. Ready for dinner? Usually, he waits until outside the dining hall to walk arm in arm with her. A show for the fairies and for Aaron. Regardless of his reasons of the shift between them, Freya takes it. They walk in silence, the only sound coming from Freya's swishing dress as they round the corners. Merlin glances at it, then her. You look good tonight. Freya's cheeks burn. Well, it is the summer solstice. He gives a slight laugh and they walk into the hall together. Her step falters as she looks around the room, unrecognizable from the nights before. The walls are burnt orange, casting a hazy sunset glow. Paintings of the sun and what she can only assume as past celebrations etched into them. An array of flowers ranging from crimson to golden yellow cover the tables. The most breathtaking part is the ethereal fairies, clad in billowing gowns and bright tunics. The number of fairies are at least triple, maybe more, than who usually attend the nightly feast. Merlin pushes her along, like he did the first night, to the head table. Aaron sits with his 3 cronies. They don't even glance in their direction. At his side Rory sits. This is the first time that Freya has seen him look princely. A thin crown of gold on top of his locks. In the middle a gleaming emerald crystal. Nothing compared to Aaron's oversized garnet-embedded crown. As she studies Rory's crown, his eyes land on hers. Unsure what to do after being caught staring at him, she offers a polite smile and looks away, as if something more interesting caught her attention. He's still looking at her when she peeks back at him. She straightens her shoulders as they approach, and Merlin pulls her chair out. A subtle gesture, but one she notices. Lily and Daniel are close behind them, and Freya raises an eyebrow at Lily when Daniel sits next to her at the head table. She gives a giddy smile back, even with the shocked look from the fairy crowd. Freya's skin tingles as Merlin places his hand on top of hers, for the whole dining room and Rory to see. Out of the corner of her eye, Freya swears she sees Aaron nod in approval. A hush falls over the hall as Aaron stands, welcoming to a night of laughter and drinking. He takes a giant swig of wine as he says this, the crowd eagerly doing the same. He welcomes Daniel to the table, announcing his courtship with the court's healer, Lily. Freya raises an eyebrow at Lily. She never knew Lily's title. She responds with a nonchalant shrug. Aaron then speaks of the summer solstice, announcing the tournament, which is met with cheers from the fairies, mostly from the males. It seems tonight will be more lively than usual. The fairies already letting loose during Aaron's greeting. His hand raises, a flash of flaming red, and then an ancient chalice sits in front of him. The golden stem consists of 2 entwining flowers. The cup glitters with engravings of the sun. Faded jewels encrusted in the middle of the suns and cover the wide base. Merlin leans over and whispers, "You might not like this part of the celebration." In another blinding flash, a smaller version of the chalice appears in front of everyone. The elixir inside looks like sunshine, glinting off the golden rim. Aaron grins as he drinks from his chalice, finishing the entire cup in one gulp. The fairies are now reverent, as they hold their glasses in front of them. In unison, everyone drinks. Freya keeps her glass in front of her, the liquid teasing her. The trickling energy inside her reaches out to it, inviting her to taste it. Merlin leans toward her, whispering, "It's the energy harness from the solstice, part of the tradition," as if that makes the shining liquid less intimidating. He holds out his untouched chalice and gives a pointed look to hers. She hesitantly lifts her glass to her lips, and they drink from their ancient chalices at the same time. It tastes like dawn. She doesn't know how it's possible, but the essence of it resembles the warm light of morning. The effects are already taking hold of her, not intoxication necessarily. It feels like power coursing through her, making her feel alive, making her for the first time in a long while feel happy. Throughout dinner, the elixir's effects stay in place. The elation isn't enough to make her oblivious to her surroundings, but enough to laugh along with Lily. She prepares for the dining hall to be transformed into a dance hall, the tables vanishing like they were never there. Even the transformed dance hall looks more spectacular than usual. Or maybe she's never allowed herself to notice its beauty. Aaron stands from his seat, beckoning Rory to follow him. As they pass behind Freya, she purposefully keeps her head straight ahead, resisting the instinct to catch his eye, especially as she feels a slight brush against her from his hand as he walks by. Instead, she glances at Merlin, who feels her gaze and meets her eye, a smile resting on his lips. Next to her, Lily stands holding Daniel's hand as they happily walk to the dance floor, joining the others, leaving Freya and Merlin alone at the table together. He takes a long sip from his wine glass. Freya gives him a look. He's never been the one to indulge in the wine. That job is usually reserved for Lily and Rory. He picks up on her judgments. "Why are you looking at me like that, Freya?" Her name rolls smoothly off his tongue. Now she turns to him. "Why are you acting like this?" Maybe the drink from the chalice affected her more than she thought. "What am I acting like?" He responds, setting down his glass to angle himself to her. "Not yourself," Freya says. "Maybe you don't know what I'm like." Her eyes narrow. "You weren't like this before." She's not exactly sure how to describe the change in his demeanor. He's more confident, more enticing. "You weren't either, Freya," he challenges. He wins that round. He smiles, knowing he's pushing her buttons, and enjoying it. His amethyst eyes glimmer as he nods to the dancers. "Should we at least try to blend in?" In her current headspace, she can't argue with his logic. She clasps her hand around his as they float to the dance floor. They settle into a free space, and he wraps his arm around her, the other holding strong to her hand as they dance. Merlin leading her, and for once she feels like she could fit in here. As he spins her, she catches a glimpse of Lily, and then the sight of Rory dancing with a tall blonde. Nope, she won't be looking at him for the rest of the night. She also notices the wandering eyes on them, catching each move her and Merlin make. "Why are they staring at us?" she says, looking back to him. "Probably because they've never seen me dance before." His teeth white as he grins, spinning her again as if to prove a point. Under her breath, Freya mutters, "I told you that you're acting differently." She forgets that his fey hearing can pick up on it, and he laughs. Louder, she asks, "Have you never brought a girl to a dance before?" It seems like there are plenty of opportunities. The song turns slower, and Merlin patches the pace, pulling Freya slightly closer. Someone's curious tonight, Merlin says softer. Let's just say I've never had the dancing kind of relationship, or someone at the head table next to me. They were more discreet. Freya laughs at this. That answer wasn't very discreet. An easy quiet falls between them as they dance. She wonders if Rory's watching them, what he thinks of Merlin dancing with her. Partly curious and partly due to the elixir's effects still coursing through her, she asks, "Why did I get so mad at you back then? Why was I so angry at the offer?" He leans closer to her. She can feel his lips grazing her ears. He speaks so quietly she almost doesn't catch his words. "You were in love with him, and I was a fool for asking in the first place." Freya tries to match his quiet tone. "So why did you?" "I think that part is obvious," he says, his grip tightening around her. "Selfish as it was, I couldn't let you get married without you knowing how I felt." "I thought I was about to slap you," Freya says, thinking of the memory, the anger in Freya's words. She feels his body silently laugh. "You did afterward. I'm actually surprised you haven't slapped me yet." Freya glances at him, his face so close to hers. "We could easily change that." Chapter 15 Brennan of Summer. Merlin grins at Freya's response as they sink into their dance, only pulled out of it when Freya hears a giddy voice bounding toward her. "Merlin, I can't believe you're dancing," Lily says, hanging on to Daniel. "I can't believe you are either," she adds as she nods at Freya. She laughs again, clearly enjoying the wine tonight. Which of course, she then offers a glass to Freya. For the first time Freya accepts. Whether it's from the lasting solstice elixir or the desire to let go, she isn't sure. Merlin already resorted back to his reserved persona, but Freya can sense the amusement in him as he watches her take a sip of the wine. The warm fuzzy feeling and slight dizziness she experienced the first time returns. She hands the glass back to Lily. Even while indulging, she needs to be smart about it. Freya smiles first at Lily, then to Merlin. He returns it as she pulls him into another dance. Lily and Daniel join next to them, pulsating with the music, and Freya finally feels like the carefree fairies surrounding her. After a few songs and stumbles, Merlin peels her away from the dance floor. "I think it's time for bed." Freya looks longingly to the party. "I don't want to leave yet." "We don't need you drunk in a room full of fairies," he says sternly, but his eyes are soft. He wraps an arm around her as they walk to the exit, his firm grip steadying her. Freya leans into his scent, welcoming his touch of support. They wind through the castle entwined, reaching the staircase leading to her room. After a few staggers from Freya, he slides one arm to her back and the other under her legs, lifting her up in a swift, easy motion. She rests her head against his chest, the soft linen thin the only barrier between them. He doesn't let go of her until they reach her bedroom, where he gracefully sets her upright. Even with his help, her landing could have been better. Merlin chuckles as she walks further in the room, and he hangs by the doorframe, one foot out watching her. "Sleep well, Freya," he murmurs. She studies his relaxed body against the door, the sheen of the hallway's dim light behind him, the violet undertones of his midnight hair matching his eyes. "Why don't you stay?" His demeanor tightens at her request, but his lips betray him with a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Merlin crosses the threshold, keeping her gaze as he grabs one of her hands and kisses it. His cool breath lingers even after he pulls away. "Not tonight." Freya purses his lips, and his amused smile returns. "Good night, Freya. I'll see you tomorrow." The moment he leaves, the temptation of sleep draws her in. She strips out of her dress, placing her flowered hairpins on the nightstand. She sinks into her plush bed with the lure of unconsciousness seeping into her bones. "Good night, Merlin," Freya whispers, not entirely aware if she said it out loud or just in her head. Freya wakes up the next morning, her eyes groggy with sleep and her hair a wild mess. The night's events seem like a blur, made even worse by the headache and nausea stirring in her stomach. Her words asking Merlin to stay flash through her head, making her groan at her forwardness. She sits up, a little too quickly for her state of being at the moment. After taking her time to get ready, Freya joins Lily in the sprawling, decorated garden where the warm afternoon sun pours down on them. When Lily first saw Freya, she laughed at Freya's haggard face, clearly not feeling well from the wine she drank. With a guilty smile, Lily placed both hands on the side of her face, blue haze leaking from them, and easily took away the nausea and throbbing headache. Amongst the other fairies in the garden waiting for the tournament to start, Lily explains the tradition. The tournament is used to find the Brennan of Summer. the strongest fighter who leads the midsummer offering. Freya raises her eyebrows at the word offering. Lily laughs it off, quickly explaining, it's not a sacrifice or anything, more of a ritual to give back to the realm and nature. Strange traditions these fairies have, and apparently a worthy title to draw in the most skilled fighters throughout the realm. Maybe this is what Rory meant about fairies having to keep things interesting. The thought of Rory tugs a memory from one of their previous conversations. Those are pixies. Make sure to ask Lily about them. Freya does exactly that. Now it's Lily's turn to look surprised. I'm half pixie, my mom is one, but my dad's a fae. Freya realizes she's never talked about her parents. They live in a different part of the realm. I keep in touch with them still, to keep them up to date. I'm sure they're proud that their daughter's the court's healer, Freya says, partly teasing her while still being impressed by the title. Lily crinkles her nose, but her voice is light. I'm only here because Rory asked me to be. We were all close growing up, and after... She doesn't finish the statement. Lily starts again. I've never liked being on a pedestal or lorded over the others. So Freya was right, the elevated head that looks down on the court is intentional. Freya eyes Aaron close to the fighting ring's edge. The same 3 men from the feast sit next to him, with Merlin on the other side. The first night, Aaron called Lily and Merlin Rory's aides, but it seems like Merlin's more than that to him. What's Merlin's role in court? Freya asks. Lily shifts uncomfortably. Since Aaron's bloodline came into power, Merlin's family has been the king's advisor, following orders, giving advice, although Aaron never seems to take it, and doing whatever the king asks of them. When Merlin's father was killed, he took his place next to Aaron. Killed. The words ring through Freya. She often forgets even immortals can die, that they don't have the chance of dying peacefully like some humans do. They have to be killed. Does Merlin like it? Being part of the court. Lily now eyes him as well, his face full of apathy as he stares at the readying competitors. Honestly, I don't know. I've never thought to ask. But from who Aaron is, what he does, I would say no. Part of Freya wants to ask Lily about Merlin. Tell her everything that's happened in the past 2 days. Even with the words bubbling inside her, she holds them down, not ready to expose herself, her and Merlin's plan, to Lily. Before Freya can say anything incriminating, Rory walks by, suited up in his usual green linen shirt. Lily calls out to him as he passes without saying hello. Excuse me, where are you going? He turns around, his mischievous smile already in place. You know me, Lily. I'm always down for a fight. Lily looks incredulous. Are you actually participating this year? I couldn't pass up the chance to show off for you ladies, he replies, as if he's doing us a service. Lily snorts at this, rolling her eyes at him. Rory gives a last look to Freya, smiling and then winking at her before joining the other competitors swarming a nearby tent. They greet him with wide smiles and claps on his back, as surprised as Lily was to find out he's competing. Why doesn't he usually compete? Freya asks Lily, curiosity getting the better of her. Lily tilts her head. He's never been fond of fighting for pleasure. Cryptic. Freya doesn't get the chance for a further explanation as the announcer begins the first match, introducing the fighters in an amplified tenor that must easily be heard for miles. As the 2 male competitors face each other, Freya realizes they have no weapons.
No armor.
Nothing. This fight will be strictly magic. A green flash signals the start of the fight. Her skin crawls as an otherworldly grating noise rings out as the earth is manipulated by the brawny, coal-haired fighter. The other, a mousy blonde, small in comparison to his competitor, sinks into the ground as the soil pulls away. Rocks wrap around his legs, securing him knee-deep in the ground. Unable to move. Freya expects the match to already be won as an orb of energy radiates, circling with wisps of mountain formations and leaves, forms in the large from the large opponent's hands, who then thrusts it at the trapped fae. Freya immediately closes her eyes, not wanting to see the damage from the impact on the helpless fae. When she opens, the exact opposite occurs. The beaming attack wraps around the Lanker fighter, but does not touch him, as if an invisible shield blocks him from the attack. With a shove of his hands, the energy blast repels back to its conjurer, knocking him off his feet. The ground beneath the fae cracks, as he jumps flies out of the pit on a coast of wind. An airy glow of light flows from him as his opponent lays still, the brawny arms pinning to his side. His limp body floats into the air, eyes wide with surprise, wrapped in a tight invisible grip. Apparently he underestimated his opponent as well. The mousy face smiles, a devious one, knowing he's won as he slams the large fae into the earth with a force that trembles the ground underneath Freya. The thick arms of the fighter slacken, and the mighty fairy lies unconscious. Freya almost screams. She grasps Lily's hand. Is he dead? How barbaric, how cruel this tradition is. She's surprised at Lily's rich laugh. Freya, it takes much more than that to kill a fairy. He'll be fine. The most painful part for him is the hit to his ego. No doubt when she turns back to ring, the announcer is holding the winning phase hand up, and the other is slowly getting off the ground. His shoulders slump as he trudges back to the tent, already cut out of the tournament. The crowd erupts into deafening cheers and the announcer begins the next match. One after another, the fairies duel each other. Some favor their elemental powers, displaying bouts of wind, lightning, water and more. No fire, Freya notices. Others employ their inherent, more personal powers, like Merlin's mist and mind tricks. It's hard for Freya to keep up with the different styles and techniques, and she constantly has to ask Lily for further explanation. The skill in the fighters increases as each match ends and another begins, until they reach the final match. The announcer bellows. Our final match decides who receives the title of Brennan of Summer. A cheer from the crowd erupts once more, the anticipation palpitating. The strongest fighter saved for last, a man who hasn't competed in years. Our Prince Rory Cadogan. The audience of fairies drown at the announcer's final words as Rory, the Prince of Fairies, steps in the fighter's ring. Chapter 16, Swords of Ice and Fire. Rory steps up to the fighter's ring, the sounds of adoring fairies echoing in the gardens. Freya shakes her head as a confident grin spreads across his face. Of course he's enjoying this. She's only seen a fraction of his power, flickers of burning flames here and there, but never in its entirety. The curiosity in her watches eagerly, while the smug part, the unrelenting one, roots for his opponent. His opponent steps in, less boldly than his previous matches, but still is a force to be reckoned with. The lanky Fae, slim but powerful, so much so that he wiped out the last rounds of fighters in mere minutes. He's shorter than Rory, his cool silvery hair and indigo tunic matching his style of magic, a manipulation of water turning it to ice. One pierce of the ice shard sharper than cut glass rendering his opponents unable to move. He even flows like water, slipping through the hands of the brawnier opponents and easily dodging attacks. A battle of opposing elements. This should be interesting. As they step closer to each other readying themselves, the slim fighter taunts Rory. You haven't been here in a while. Sure you can keep up? Rory lets out a mighty and dominating laugh. For your sake, let's hope not. His lips twist into a grin. A predator playing with his prey, Freya realizes. The announcer begins the fight, and neither of them advance, awaiting the other to make the first attack. Both tactful and strategized. This will be a long fight. Rory baits him. You can give up now, it'll be easier for you. It works. The silver face streams toward him, a wake of water droplets around him. He moves so fast Freya's human eyes hardly catch it. Appearing behind Rory, two ice daggers already in his hand, he goes for the kill. Rory dodges them with ease, stepping away as if he already knew the plan of attack. The Fae's eyes narrow as the crowd cheers at Rory's deft movement. All camaraderie between them vanishes, and the water user twists two flowing tendrils of water, ice at the end of them, waiting for Rory's next move. But, he slinks to the other side of the ring, as if he's taking part in a leisurely stroll and not a competition. His opponent now enraged by Rory's nonchalance. Freya understands the feeling all too well, and flying shards of ice, pointed into arrowheads, surge at Rory. As they're about to pierce him, they extinguish as flame of ambers vaporize the water into a glacier blue mist. His first use of magic. His second use follows quickly, as a trail of crimson flames run across the ground. His opponent flees from it, trying to get closer to Rory, but the blazing fire follows him in each movement, until it encircles him completely. The ring of fire connects and rises around him, closing above him with no way out. His silhouette is visible through the flames as he tries to douse them with water. With each impact the flames grow stronger, brighter. Rory walks no struts to the sinewy opponent trapped in the fire. He reaches the circle's edge and Rory continues walking through the flames, as if they're not even there. The fire roars around them with a furiosity completely separate from his playful personality. As soon as Rory enters, the fire closes in, making the space between them tighter. He has him trapped with no escape. Through the flames Freya watches as the opponent forms a sword of ice, swinging masterfully from his hands. He launches it hard at Rory, a death shot. Freya almost gasps as it nears his body, but Rory catches the sword in his hand. Now it's the crowd's turn to gasp at the display of sheer power. The sharp edge not even making a dent in his hand, and the opponent turns it to liquid, knowing its uselessness. It's hard to imagine that this fighter is the last one standing, powerful and taunting the others, winning each round easily. Freya realizes that Rory knew that, to not make an attack on him in the open ring, he could dodge them with his agility. The only way to win was to trap him where water couldn't save him. How Rory's flames are impenetrable to water, Freya doesn't know. Within the flames, it's hard to tell which body parts belong to who as they fight. Hand-to-hand, Freya's surprised Rory doesn't finish it in a swift blow of flame. So mesmerized by the fight, Freya only now picks up on Lily's tenseness. Her hands are folded tightly against her, and the expression of concern amplified by her doe-like eyes. "Why do you look like you're about to pass out from worry?" Freya asks. Her eyes look back to the wall of flames. Lily can't look away either. Rory could have won the moment the match started, but he's drawing it out. I can't tell what he's going to do. And if he accidentally unleashes? Unleashes what? What would happen? Freya pushes. He'll be the only one walking away from this fight, Lily responds, not answering Freya's first question. But Lily's response is enough. Rory can easily defeat the best fighter. He could accidentally kill him if he's not careful. Do you think that will happen? Freya wonders. From the looks of it, no. But if it takes a turn, maybe. Lily presses her hands together tighter. They both sit in anxious silence, as they await the outcome of the fight. The shadow of Rory, hidden in the flames, lands a blow on the water Fae and Freya can hear the groan, the breath completely knocked out of him. Rory lands another one and the Fae falls to the ground. The flames flicker and then extinguish, signaling the end of the fight. A moment of silence, and then the throngs of fairy onlookers erupt into cheers. The announcer raises Rory's hand. The Brennan of Summer has been crowned. His opponent stirs and Rory extends a hand to help him up. The Fae takes it, although the ego bruise is clear on his face. But the competitor's understanding between them holds no animosity. Lily's face relaxes and Freya's does too, not realizing how tense she's been since Lily expressed her worry. The fairies rush toward the ring, crowding around Rory as they celebrate their prince and now Brennan king. With one eye still on him, she asks Lily. Exactly how strong are his powers? Lily muses. I'm not entirely sure. Fae, especially ones in high positions, like to keep their powers a secret so whoever they're fighting will never have the advantage or know their limits. Smart. But, limits? Freya asks. There must be a cap on abilities, but if there are other ones, that would be useful to know. Lily nods. Each fairy has their own limit, depending on their strongest abilities. Part of our powers come from our parents, and others are uniquely our own. But the weaker ones drain energy much quicker, especially if used excessively. She pauses, adding, it's like when Merlin had to rest after creating the glamour to kidnap you, which by the way I'm still angry at them for. Freya's head snaps up. He made a what? He didn't tell you? He can manipulate what you see and don't see and who sees you. One of his cooler powers from his mom actually, but one of his weakest. Freya ponders over this, remembering that night. The utter silence, the darkness. Now it makes sense. A shudder goes through her and she asks an easier question. Why doesn't Rory like fighting? Maybe not easier for Lily. She shifts uncomfortably, clearly a sore subject. He's powerful, almost at the level of Aaron, which is why Aaron used him to fight back in the day. He's never been able to stomach it since, not really. Then why did he fight today? Freya wonders aloud. I have no idea, Lily says, but here's your chance to ask him. Indeed, Rory is sauntering their way, an expectant look of smugness on his face, awaiting praise or fear. She doesn't know. Enjoy the show, Freya? He asks as he sits next to her, stretching out leisurely like the fight didn't tire him out one bit. Freya looks away as she responds aloofly, I hardly watched. Lies, he says, a devilish grin peeking out. You couldn't keep your eyes off me. Freya raises her eyebrows at him. Your confidence is extra high today. And you are extra ravishing today, Rory quips. Freya smacks him on the shoulder. Lily pipes in. Freya has something to ask you. Freya almost smacks her too. Lily laughs at her glare. She wants to know why you decided to fight today, and so do I. Rory cocks an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. It's out there now. He looks to the mass of fairies, and Freya waits for him to say attention, glory, something along those lines. Instead, he answers, if anyone finds out about you. His emerald eyes turn to Freya. I wanted to remind them what would happen if they try to hurt you. Not the answer she was expecting. Lily neither. Before his reasoning fully processes, a few of the competitors call out to Rory to join them. He gets up, winking at both of them as he says, duty calls, and joins the laughing Faye. Lily starts to get up. I have some things I need to do before dinner tonight, but I'll see you there? It sounds like she's asking Freya permission to leave. Freya can read between the lines. Do these things have to do with Daniel? Lily gives her a confirming look that they do. Freya sits in her room with a book in her hand, the late afternoon sun lazing in. She found a stash of her old collection of books, and decided to flip through them, intrigued by her past self's taste. Flora pounces on her open page, pawing at it until Freya puts the book down. She eyes the cat. And what do you want? In response, Flora leaps from her, waiting at the bedroom door. How a fat cat is so lithe, Freya will never understand. Flora paws at the door, looking back to Freya. She opens the door, and expects Flora to run out. The cat waits as if she wants Freya to follow her. In light of having anything better to do, she does. She follows Flora throughout the castle, traveling down corridors and stairwells she's never been in. The castle feels endless, increased by the windows stretching from floor to ceiling showcasing the grounds. They reach a dim hall, and Flora stops abruptly. Freya halts, about to make a comment to her cat, but she hears faint voices floating toward her from the other end of the hall. One of them a stern, velvety female voice she's never heard before. So quiet she can't pick out her words, but she can tell she's angry. Her counterpart responds, and this voice she recognizes. Merlin's. Freya inches closer, but Flora hisses at her, making Freya stay put. Straining to hear, she feels that tug inside her. Maybe if her powers are returning, her Fey hearing will return too. She focuses on the energy, calming herself and willing herself to hear. She smiles as the voices become clear. A short-lived smile as she listens. The woman's voice is bitter. Merlin, forget it. I'm not doing it. I can't do it. I will not put myself or you at risk. Aaron would be furious. I don't care what Aaron wants, I care about what Freya wants. Merlin snaps back. Her voice rises with heat as she repeats. I can't do it. Things were different back then, things have changed. Especially for her. She sneers at the last word. After what she did. Rianne, you know she didn't have a part in that. His voice a calm rage. Silence. And then 5 damning words from the woman. 5 words that break Freya. I'm not breaking the oath. Chapter 17 The Hidden Meadow. Freya paces in her bedroom, waiting for the Midsummer Eve celebration to start. A golden haze already brimming over the gardens outside as the celebratory bonfires are lit. They crest over the forest, into the distant villages, and ruby smoke rises from the distant mountains as the moon rises behind them. Celebration by firelight. Freya would find it dazzling if not for the knot twisting inside her stomach. Not if her one wish, being released from the oath, won't happen. She dresses in a sage and terracotta ensemble, leaving her room before Merlin arrives to escort her. Facing him right now feels impossible with her feelings wildly stirring inside her. She needs to talk to him, but not yet. Not until she's ready and can handle the answer he'll give her. Tonight she'll have a calm mask, only coming off when she's ready to confront him. In the garden, the churned and scarred earth of the fighting ring has already been landscaped over, as if the tournament hadn't happened hours earlier. Freya first spots Lily and Daniel near one of the bonfires, absorbed in a lively debate that leads to laughter. Easy. Freya feels a twinge of jealousy at it. Rory stands by the fire. Surely he had a part to play in lighting the scattered fires, the flames reaching waist-high on him. Merlin isn't there, and Freya sighs in relief. Not yet, she reminds herself. Not in front of the multitude of fairies. She makes her way to Lily, feeling like she's the safest option at the moment. She grins as Freya approaches, her ruffled strawberry blonde hair pinned into an updo, her sapphire eyes bright. Daniel and her scoot over for Freya to have a space to sit on the bench. Daniel greets her with a light grin. Freya has to be cautious of what she says around him. He only sees the allure on her, knowing her as Lily's new friend and Merlin's companion. Secretly, she appreciates the feeling of normalcy it brings her. Of him not looming over her, waiting for answers or powers or memories. She can just be. Naturally, Rory breaks up their light conversation, fire still blazing at his fingertips, proving Freya's suspicions about him being the fire starter. They extinguish as he squeezes in the spot next to Freya. She nudges him, trying to make him slide over, or be pushed off the side of the small bench. Either alternative works. It feels like she slams into a stone mountain, him not even budging. Rory smirks. Someone's in a festive mood today. I'm surprised you're not too worn out from your match, Freya retorts, eyeing him. Rory and Lily both laugh at this, proving his point. It takes a lot more than that to wear me out, he says with a mischievous grin. Lily turns to him exasperated and playful. Oh please, do you always need to be so cocky? Yes, Lily, I do. She rolls her eyes at him and she turns back to Daniel. Quieter, Rory asks. How's the decision-making process going? Freya glares. I thought you weren't going to ask me about it. I'll leave it alone, just checking where your head's at, he calmly responds. After the conversation she overheard, or more accurately eavesdropped on, she doesn't have a straight answer for him. What she needs is more information. Freya glances at Lily, lost in conversation with Daniel. This is Freya's chance. She flicks her head, pointing to an empty side of the garden, near the forest's edge. Can we take a walk? Rory looks surprised but eagerly accepts. They walk, Rory with his hands in his pockets, and Freya wishes she had some. Giving a place to hide her fidgeting hands. Her nerves are tight inside her. They reach the edge, the glow of the flames burn in the distance, casting shadows across Rory's face. His brows furrow as he picks up on Freya's edgy demeanor. She stands stiff, trying to control her spinning insides. He glances over her face, the mask of calm erased. Freya debates how to say the words because once she does he'll ask questions. He'll find out about Merlin. Even in her disappointment and anger with him, she can't betray him like that. Not to Rory. He looks between her and a lightly tread pathway through the woods. Want to see something cool? He raises his eyebrows, an obvious attempt to lift her mood. An attempt she appreciates. She nods, walking beside him, thankful for the prolonging of what she needs to say. He looks up at the sky as they walk, but Freya's eyes are on the life teeming in the forest, between the night-blooming jasmine casting a sweet scent as sprites flit around them, their luminescent lights beaming from them. Glittering lightning bugs draw to them, and together they enchant the forest with their glow, interchanging and constantly moving, enhancing the magical feeling of the night. If Freya didn't feel sick to her stomach, she would think it's beautiful. As they move deeper, Rory conjures an orb of fire, floating in the air, lighting the path for Freya. She admits to herself the act is thoughtful, her human eyes aren't as strong as his. Maybe that'll be the next ability she gains back. Her amplified hearing relishes in the lively sounds of the forest, the hum of sprites, chirping insects, and scurrying of critters in the dark. They reach a small clearing, only a fraction of the meadow she arrived at on the first day. Towering oaks and redwoods encircle it, the branches giving way to the night sky. He walks to the middle of the meadow, lying down on the mossy earth. What are you doing? Freya asks, standing awkwardly as he looks up at her. Just lay down, Rory says, a smile resting on his lips. Reluctantly, she lays next to him, leaving enough space that they aren't touching. He turns his head to the night sky. Look up. She turns her head up, and her breath catches as curtains of light drift across the night sky like watercolors of jade and lilac against a black canvas, flowing seamlessly in and out of each other, rippling as they cast their light on the meadow below. What is it? Freya asks, still staring in wonder. It's the magic of the realm, the lights always grow stronger during the solstice. His voice a mix of reverence and admiration. This is one of my favorite places. They used to be brighter, but after the two realms separated, they've started to grow dimmer over the years. Freya can't imagine the lights being more stunning or bright than they are now. Is it serious? The lights, I mean, she asks. Rory takes a moment to answer. Both realms have been growing weaker but still manageable. She peels her eyes away from the sky to look at him. You really don't think I caused it? Rory's eyes slide to hers, his voice is stern. No, of course not. He looks back to the sky, his voice heavy. A lot happened back then, too much loss we all had to grieve at once. Then the link broke and you were gone. You always cared about both realms, if anything, I think you were trying to protect them. His words sting, how he lost her in an instant with no explanation. The grief in his voice as he spoke. And what he's feeling now, how his bride-to-be sits beside him, ready to risk anything to not marry him. Interrupting her thoughts, he says, why don't you tell me what's been making you nervous to talk to me about? Her body fills with butterflies, the pit in her stomach returning. Focusing on the beauty of the sky instead of her words, she asks, why didn't you tell me there's a way to break the oath? She can feel his eyes on her, but her gaze remains locked on the shimmering lights. His voice is quiet. Who told you that? So he does know. It doesn't matter who told me. Merlin did. Your best friend. Freya continues. What matters is you kept it from me. Freya, he starts. This is a mistake. Angrily she gets to her feet and starts walking through the forest. He promised no lies, no tricks. Her frustration surmounting inside her. Barely any distance between them before he tugs at her hand. She turns, knowing if she didn't, he would appear in front of her, blocking her exit. What? What excuse do you have? Or do you want me back so badly that you're willing to force me into a marriage? Her voice is cold, and maybe the fighters couldn't hurt him. But the look on his face tells her that she can. She yanks her hand from his and he lets go. She waits for an answer. Freya, I didn't know there was a way to break the curse, he says, searching her eyes for what Freya knows. I've heard rumors before. There used to be a type of magic that could bend the rules, breaking oaths. But even that, his eyes grow darker, even that has consequences. I couldn't offer you something I didn't have. Which is exactly what Merlin did. He had been so sure of it. Freya had been sure of it. The woman that Merlin argued with, he believed she could. And she said she used to be able to. Which means that Rory doesn't know of her, or her powers. Unless. You said no lies, Freya sneers. He takes a step toward her. I'm not lying, Freya. I can't. For the first time he's at a loss for words. Our bargain, Freya, I can tell when you're lying and you can tell when I am. So tell me, am I lying? Freya's not sure how to tell how that's even possible. She stares him in the eyes. He repeats, I don't know how to break the oath. A tiny feeling in her gut knows he's telling the truth. Her anger subsides. She relaxes her shoulders. Fine, you're not lying. Who told you they could break it? She can't lie. There are some things I don't have to tell you. Another standoff between them. She waits, waiting for him to force it out of her. The hum of the sprites is the only sound between them. Rory caves first. Fine, don't tell me. But listen to me, Freya, there are people you can't trust here. Lily, Merlin, we are here for you. But please. The guilt inside her flares as he names Merlin. How he's gone behind his back, how she's even gone behind Rory's back. She needs to talk to Merlin to hear his explanation. Okay. That's all she can muster. Let's go back to the others. His mouth sags a little, but the guiding flaming orb flickers before them, lighting the path. They walk back in silence, and she can feel him glancing at her. She stares straight ahead, the bonfires and laughter growing with each step. They reach the edge of the forest. She barely catches his last words to her. I'm sorry, Freya, as she walks into the crowd of fairies, dancing circles around the fires. She spots Merlin across the fire and makes her way toward him. Chills run up her spine as she hears a familiar woman's voice whisper, Hello, Freya. Freya whirls around. The woman she heard with Merlin. Her eyebrows raised, her smooth raven hair falling just above her shoulders, cut into an angled bob that perfectly frames her face. Her sapphire blue eyes, similar to Lily's, gleaming at Freya. She catches Freya's look of surprise. Oh, don't worry, everyone here is too drunk to listen to us, she responds, her eyes studying her. How do you know who I am? She snorts. Please, I can always see through Merlin's allures. He should really work on making them stronger. Before Freya can respond, Merlin appears beside them. Rianne, what are you doing? She grins wickedly, her teeth white as fresh snow. Just having fun with my old friend. Chapter 18, Bewitching Hour. Freya looks between the two of them. Their matching black hair, different eyes but same complexion. Are you two brother and sister? Yes, Rianne says offhandedly. I was wondering when I'd get to see you again. Her eyes survey Freya, clearly unimpressed. Freya pushes her shoulders back, not ready to be intimidated by her. I heard you today, both of you. Freya's tone is accusatory as her eyes cut to Merlin and back to Rianne. Rianne's ruby lips twitch in annoyance. What exactly did you hear? Now Freya has the upper hand. That you can't do what Merlin offered me. Merlin looks at Freya, but she keeps her gaze on Rianne. She'll deal with him later. Rianne's glacier eyes pierce Freya's. You're right. And if I could, I wouldn't. Not for you. She looks Freya up and down one more time before walking away. Her black hair swishing around her cheekbones. Merlin stares at her. Freya, how did you? That doesn't matter. When were you going to tell me? Right before I would have to say yes. Freya asks him. Let's go inside, let's talk, Merlin says quietly. No. I've already heard everything I need to know. She juts her chin to where Rianne stands, drinking wine coolly by herself. Not surprising, she's probably scared everyone away with her attitude. Freya turns her back to Merlin, her voice grave. Don't follow me. And she walks to the castle. No echo of footsteps behind her. Freya tries to sleep, constantly turning in her bed trying to find the right spot. The fires are still burning through the night, but her blinds are shut tightly. In the pitch black, Rianne's voice replays over in her head. Her inability to break the oath. Things have changed. That's what everyone keeps saying. She's drawn out of her thoughts from a slight knock at the door, and then Merlin's voice enters her mind. Let me in, Freya. Please, we need to talk. Silence. She doesn't move. And then, I know you're awake. This time she gets up, opening the door. Merlin looks stressed. His curly black hair is disheveled. The muscles in his body and face tense as he looks at Freya, glaring at him in her nightgown. I told you to stop getting in my head. Freya greets him, her voice cold. He ignores this, the urgency in his eyes clear as he asks, Can I come in? Without saying a word, Freya widens the door enough to let him slip in before shutting it. She stays against the door as he walks to the middle of her room. I was going to tell you, he states. When? Freya demands through gritted teeth. Earlier tonight, I came to your room but you were already at the fire. And then Lily told me you went with Rory somewhere, so I was going to wait until you got back, he explains. I didn't know you overheard us. You should have told me as soon as you found out, Freya argues, her anger now fuming. Better yet, you should have never offered in the first place. I know. The passion in his words matches Freya's. I'm sorry, Freya. That's not good enough. Now he's frustrated too. He steps toward her. I know it's not good enough, Freya. I thought it would work. I thought Rian could do it. She never told me she couldn't. She offered back then when she saw me completely in love with you. Freya crumbles a little under the words he's never said out loud before. But, Rory and her conversation tugs at the back of her mind. How can she even do it? Rory said. You told Rory. His voice is black. Now Freya feels like she's the one on trial. I didn't mention you to him, Freya quickly backpedals. He said that he doesn't know anyone that could break O's. If Rian is your sister, then how could he? Cutting her off mid-sentence. Don't. He moves closer to her and Freya backs against the door. Merlin's hands plant firmly on it. Freya caught between them. He rasps, Don't tell anyone about Rian. Why? Freya quips back. His frustration returns. I want to tell you, but please, let this one go. What if I don't want to? Freya counters. I'm not asking you. His voice is still at the finality of it. They glare at each other inches apart, both breathing heavily from the swelling emotions. I don't know if I can forgive you, Merlin. If I can trust you. Freya slips out, barely a whisper. His amethyst eyes burn. I'm not sure if I can trust you either. Freya wants to slap him. Her voice sounds detached. I guess it's over, I'll be engaged tomorrow. Even as she says this, in her rage at him, the disappointment, the other hurtful part of it all, that she had thought maybe she could have ended up with him. Merlin's eyes flicker to her lips, the heat in him changing. His lips mouth, until tomorrow, as they press into hers. The anger inside Freya turns to a different kind of burning, as her lips move with his, pushing herself into his strong arms. He moves his hand from the wall, gripping her waist, a hand in her hair. Freya lets herself have him, at least for this moment. Until tomorrow. Freya lays in bed the next morning, hardly getting any sleep after her and Merlin's kiss, resulting in a swirling mix of emotions, offset by the crushing weight of what day it is. Midsummer. The sounds of happy fairies float from outside, the festivities taking place throughout the course of the day until the next dawn, welcoming the arrival of the sun. Freya wishes she could turn her fey hearing off, to drown out the jovial and carefree noises. Flora, usually leaving for adventure, senses Freya's mood and cuddles next to her. In just a few hours she'll be engaged. Engaged to Rory. The thought itself makes Freya stay in bed most of the day, only breaking out of it when she hears the creak of her door. She half expects it to be Merlin, but Lily walks in. Hi, she says, waiting at the threshold. Freya barely moves, rolling over to look at her. I noticed you weren't in the gardens and wanted to check on you. She walks to the bed, sitting, examining Freya's face. Are you all right? Freya sits up. Did Rory tell you about the deadline too? Her face says he did. I wanted to ask you about it, but I didn't want to make things worse. I was waiting for you to talk, to bring it up if you wanted. Freya looks at her. The feelings in her are rising, and she can't keep it from her anymore. I kissed Merlin last night. Or truthfully, he kissed her. But she enjoyed it just as guilty as him. Merlin? Lily asks, clearly shocked. You kissed Merlin? The whole castle doesn't need to know. Freya hisses at her loud voice. I'm sorry, I'm just surprised. Something clicks in her eyes. Is that why you two have been dancing together? That you two? She trails off. When did it start? Freya tells her everything. Or mostly everything. leaving out the part of the offer to break the oath of Rianne. She tells her part of the memory of him, his declaration all those years ago to her, him confronting her about it, their growing friendship, their easy dancing. Last night. After she finishes, her words settle around them like dust in the air. Lily says, "I'll be honest, Freya. I didn't know he had it in him." Freya raises an eyebrow. "What is that supposed to mean?" "I always suspected he had a thing for you, but I was never sure. You were so in love." She stops herself before saying Rory's name, but it's enough to make Freya glare at her. "I just never thought he had a chance. And now I have to be engaged to his best friend, unless I want to return to the human realm." Lily nods, unsure of what to say. A first for Lily. Freya asks, "What should I do?" "I don't know," Lily whispers. Freya lies back down. And then, "I thought you and Rory were." "I don't know. I thought maybe you two were falling back in love." "I'm sorry, you what?" Freya asks. "You two just seemed so enamored with each other." She shrugs. "I wouldn't call constant bickering with each other enamored." Freya snaps back. "Hey, I don't know how you flirt. Plus, going into the forest together last night seemed a little romantic to me." Her eyebrows raising suggestively. Freya shoots that down quickly. "Well, it wasn't. Clearly. If right after you kissed Merlin." Freya shoots her a death glare and Lily quickly retracts her statement. "I'm not judging. Only saying what I observed." Quiet falls between them again. Lily softly asks, "Have I told you about my first husband?" Freya turns to her in surprise. She's never mentioned anyone other than Daniel. "What happened to him?" "When I was younger, my parents arranged a marriage for me. I didn't want it, but I was so young back then. I didn't know how to stand up for myself. So I agreed." Her eyes glisten but her voice stays strong. "He was cruel, unkind, unfaithful, but still possessive. I knew it the first time I met him, a day before our wedding. Back then the Fey realm was broken up into equal rulers instead of one king. I hadn't met Rory or Merlin yet. My parents wanted a higher social standing to be part of a court, so they used me as their ticket to the life they wanted, marrying me to one of the Fey King's sons, to bring our families together in unison. It was," she pauses. Her eyes are lost in the memory. "It was terrible. The lowest point in my life. It only got better when his family waged war against Aaron, their rival court. It's strange to say war was better than marriage. But it was. I went too as a healer. I'm still not sure if it's because they actually needed me, or if he didn't want me to be alone, to leave while he was gone." Freya notices her refusal to say his name. "Our station was ambushed one night. I was the only healer there. Rory had come in with a handful of men. It was a brutal fight. But I almost rejoiced when Rory defeated him. The cruelty of that court, of the man I married, was suddenly gone. I didn't have to worry about him anymore. I healed Rory's soldiers that were hurt. Not that the rumors of Aaron were better, but I could tell something was good in Rory. They never laid a finger on me, and Rory brought me back to court with him, making me head healer, and promising I never had to go back to the terrible people I came from." Freya blinks. No one had ever mentioned this before. This explains Rory's deterrence to fight. Why Lily was so surprised that he fought at all. Words escape Freya. She never knew. Never thought to ask. "I'm sorry, Lily." She smiles at the words in a stronger place than all those years ago. "I'm not telling you for pity. I'm telling you because there are worse people to be married to. I know right now you don't want it. But maybe one day, you'll learn to love him again." "I don't know if that will happen, Lily," Freya responds quietly. But with the story, with the heart of who Rory is, what he did for Lily, the weight in her heart, still there, lifts enough for her to feel like she can breathe.